The morning after the fight, the scene was one of desolation and horror. The ground was littered with Zulu dead. They lay in heaps around the barricades, many fallen atop one another, where they had charged en masse. Some still clutched their spears and shields, eyes wide in fury or frozen terror. Our own wounded were being tended to in the makeshift hospital, though the building itself was blackened and charred. The dead of our small garrison were laid out in silence. Blood pooled in the dust, where fierce fighting had occurred, and the stench of burnt flesh and blood was thick in the air. I cannot speak too highly of the conduct of the men. Though exhausted, they continued to carry water, bind wounds, and reinforce the shattered defences in case of another assault. At around 8 a.m., a column under Lord Chelmsford arrived, and the relief was palpable. Some wept, others simply collapsed where they stood. It was only then, with help at hand, that I realized the full weight of what we had endured.
I remember the morning after. It was quiet, eerily so, not a sound from the hills. We were too stunned to speak, too tired to sleep. Around us, the enemy lay thick, most with terrible wounds. I helped bury them, though it was hard work, and many had to be burned for fear of disease. The heat made the smell unbearable. Some of our lads sat alone, staring into nothing. We'd all seen too much in those hours, and yet we were alive, barely. I'd fought for my life with a bayonet and my fists when I had no rifle left, but it wasn't heroism, it was survival. When the relief column came, they looked at us like ghosts. And maybe we were.
We rode into the station after the action had ceased. It was a dreadful sight. The storehouse was pockmarked with bullets and reeked of smoke. Dead Zulus covered the field, and their shields were strewn everywhere. British bodies, too, though fewer in number, were being gathered by comrades. The defenders looked haggard and blood-stained, some barefoot, others wounded. Their eyes were red, and many hadn't slept in over 36 hours. It was clear they had held out by sheer willpower. I spoke with the sergeant, who simply said, "We thought we were done for." He showed me where the barricades had been breached, where desperate hand-to-hand combat had taken place. One could still see the drag marks in the dirt where bodies had been pulled.
When the firing ceased, the stillness was uncanny. We had grown so used to the sound of rifles and screams that the silence itself was deafening. I had spent most of the night attending the wounded in the corner of the storehouse that served as both redoubt and refuge. The heat, the blood, the cries. It was a kind of madness. Many men bore bayonet and assegai wounds. We had precious few bandages, and the floor was sticky with blood. As dawn broke, I stepped outside for the first time in hours. The air was cool, but the scene that met my eyes was grim beyond words. Zulu corpses were piled against the barricades, some clutching the very mealy bags we'd used for cover. Their faces were twisted in rage or agony. Our own dead lay scattered about the interior and along the outer wall. I remember covering Private Cole, who had died bravely defending the hospital. We had no coffins, just rough blankets. Burial parties were immediately formed, and I helped oversee the removal of the dead. Some of the defenders were in shock, others quietly wept. And yet there was also a strange sense of triumph. Not joy, but disbelief that we had lived. When Lord Chelmsford's column arrived later that morning, I remember a young officer dismounting and simply staring at the field. He said, "My God, how did you hold?" I had no answer for him. We had, somehow. I later wrote to a friend that I hoped never to see such a night again, though I feared it would never leave my mind.
was not till the light came that we saw clearly what we had endured. The sun rose over a field of death. Zulus lay thick as grass about the station. Some had fallen right at our walls, mere feet from our bayonets. Others farther off, where the rifle volleys had cut them down. Many had terrible wounds. Some still breathed faintly and had to be dispatched. A grim task, but necessary, and the place stank of blood, smoke and powder. Our barricades were riddled with holes and splinters. The hospital was blackened and burned, and the wounded we pulled from it were in pitiful state. I myself had taken a wound to the shoulder, but continued fighting. We had no surgeon, only Dr. Reynolds, who did the work of 10 men. Men lay on the ground groaning, their shirts soaked through. Some had no boots, no coats, just the bloodied remnants of what had been uniform. I helped carry the bodies of our dead. We laid them in rows and said what prayers we could. There was no time for sentiment, only duty. The Zulu dead we dragged into piles. The ground was too hard to dig proper graves, and so they were burned in great heaps. We were like ghosts by the time Lord Chelmsford arrived. Some of the men just stared at the horizon, not speaking. I saw Colour Sergeant Bourne collapse from sheer exhaustion. None of us had eaten or slept in more than a day. Still, we had held. And though I take no joy in killing, I know we did what we must. The Queen will hear of what we did here, I've no doubt, but it will never be enough to truly describe it.
At dawn, the full horror of the night became visible. The dead lay thick about the barricades, Zulus in hundreds. Many had fallen in the act of climbing, their hands still gripping the wagons or mealie bags. The ground was churned red with blood and littered with shields, spears and rifles. The cries of the wounded, ours and theirs, rang out in the still morning. Inside the station, the scene was equally grim. The hospital was a blackened ruin. The air reeked of smoke and burning flesh. I went from man to man, seeing who had survived. Some had collapsed from sheer fatigue. Others sat in silence staring, their minds still fixed in the terror of the fight. I remember helping bury our own lads. We had no coffins. We wrapped them in blankets and laid them to rest in shallow graves. I read a few words over them. Many of us cried. The Zulu dead we could not bury properly. There were too many. Some were buried in large pits, others were burned. When Lord Chelmsford arrived with his column, we stood to attention as best we could, ragged, bloodied and half dead with exhaustion. He was visibly moved by what he saw. He spoke to Lieutenant Chard and said we had done more than any man could have asked. In the days that followed I began to understand the magnitude of it, but at the time it was simply a matter of survival. We fought as best we could, and by some miracle we held. I was promoted soon after, but declined a commission at the time. I didn't feel I had earned it. Those who died that night deserved it more.